So, people say that patience is a virtue, and it is. That's why I've decided to use patience as an example in sharing how patience can also be a principle that we live and practice in our day-to-day lives. So patience is something that it doesn't really matter where you are, what you're doing, who you're with. It's something that can quite easily be challenged. So we can quite easily lose our patience with the computer, with our family, with our work, with animals, with drivers on the road. You know, that it's something that if we're having a bit of a bad day, we don't have a whole hell of a lot of patience. So, how does patience then become a principle, and how can we practice living that principle in our day-to-day lives, even when we're having a bit of a shit day? So, let's look at the nature of patience. Patience is allowing others the time and space that they need to develop themselves or to do something, accomplish something, to work through whatever they need to work through. And very often impatience is not about anyone or anything else at all. It's about ourselves. Let's take an easy example where we get frustrated and impatient with an animal because maybe the dog's in the way and they're not getting out of the way fast enough. So we then get irritated with the dog and say, "You stupid dog, get out of the way." But in fact, who do we become in that kind of behavior, in that kind of belief about the dog, that it's their fault for A, being in the way, and B, not getting out of the way fast enough when we want to walk somewhere? When we could just as simply move around, ask the dog gently or politely to move out of the way, and give them the time that it takes to get out of the way. And that point of frustration with them is very often carried through from some other part of our lives, where maybe we have had some bad news, or our boss is irritating us, or the computer is just not working today, which is something that seems to happen to me a lot. But in any case, we then take our frustrations out on those around us, and it becomes this kind of impatience, this irrational expectation that everything should be perfect and everything should be not in our way at all, and if it is in our way, it needs to get out of our way damn fast. So how can we practice being patient even when we're frustrated? So what I do is that, first of all, it's important for me that I remind myself in those moments where I am impatient or frustrated that this is not actually who I want to be. I have to be willing to make the effort to change, to be different. And because often what happens is when we're frustrated, we want to stay in that frustration. We don't actually want to change, and that basically just locks us in. And if you don't want to change, you're not going to make the effort to change. It's as simple as that. So I remind myself, this is not who I want to be. First step. Second point is what often happens, I know with me, is that I become very irrational. For example, expecting a dog to immediately be out of my way if they're in my way. And that irrationality, I find, if I remind myself and kind of bring myself back down to earth of how can I expect this from someone? How can I expect, for example, the dog to get out of the way in half a second? It's not possible. Why am I need to stop being irrational with them. I'm not being fair. And I'll be quite hard on myself in those moments to jolt myself out of it, I'll say to myself, you are being unfair. You are not being reasonable. Stop being a bitch. Because, like I said, I find that actually helps me to just get out of that state. And now in a different example where I get frustrated with other people, like say someone is learning something new, I'm helping them learn something new, and I get frustrated because they're not picking it up fast enough, and I just want to take over and do it myself. I will remind myself that learning is a process. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, and it is unfair of me to expect someone else to do things the way that I want them to be done and the way that I would do them, considering that I have all of this experience and they don't. They are learning, and I have to let go and give them that space and time that they need to learn. And for me, that simple reminder, there's simple points of common sense that I bring back to my awareness is often enough to jar me out of a state of impatience and frustration. Because in that state that I'm in, I'm completely irrational, and as long as I'm not willing to be rational, I'll stay in that state. But once I reach that point of I'm willing to look at things differently to how I'm looking at them now in this frustration, then as soon as I bring that element of common sense back, then, I'm a different person again, apparently. But I'm not a different person. It's just a different part of me that I choose to bring to the forefront. That part of me of practicing patience, of practicing common sense, of practicing consideration, of practicing not taking frustrations out on the people and the things around me. And that is how I practice the principle of patience. So remember, if you have any questions or requests or comments or anything, please send a direct message or leave a comment on the video. Otherwise, I shall see you next time for the next one. You can support me on Patreon. The link is below. Thank you for watching.